Hello witches, witchlings, folk practitioners, and everyone who happens to find themselves in my little corner of the internet. My name is Chaotic Witch Aunt, I also go by Frankie, and welcome to another Story Tea Time. Today I have a little turmeric golden chai latte, which is absolutely delicious, and I'm very excited. And today I am going to be sharing some of the stories from my work with fox spirits. This is something that I've been relatively open out about for a while, my relationship with the spirit of the fox or specific fox spirits. Is very much something that I'm comfortable with sharing, that they're comfortable with me sharing. It's not a private relationship, it's one that I think I like sharing because I feel like, to my knowledge, not a lot of people work with foxes as an animal spirit, which makes me kind of sad, but I understand why. A little bit of background into my knowledge of foxes. My original kind of understanding of the fox was a trickster spirit. That is the same in many different cultures across the world. They are very big in Japanese mythology and folklore. They're also found in certain regions in Italian folklore. There's specifically a story called Giovanezza the Fox. Giovanezza, yeah. And from, I believe, Naples, that tells the story of a fox who assists a poor farmer to become amassed in riches and wealth through basically just like cleverness. For a really long time, I didn't think of foxes as trickster spirits. I think because my experiences with them were not really trickster spirit type. They were more just kind of beneficial and protective to me, but they really are. And I think the fun thing about working with a animal spirit that is widely regarded in different folklore as trickster is that you never really know what's going to happen. So, and this is kind of my, sharing some of my stories of that, because there are definitely some times where I'm like, this was super clear, totally understand, and then there were some times where, they were unhappy with specifically one skull tends to be more finicky, one spirit tends to be more finicky than the other. There were times where I would place this skull in a certain part of the house that she didn't like, and she'd let me know very quickly. So this is just some of my background with working with fox spirits. I do consider one of the fox spirits I work with, or just I consider like them almost like a familiar. I think that the terminology has changed a lot over, I think my understanding of the terminology of the word familiar is a little different. I feel like familiar, when we think in terms of like traditional witchcraft or folkloric witchcraft, is oftentimes a spirit that you contract to help with certain things. Versus I think my definition of familiar, when I originally felt that way, was more along the lines of, it's just a spirit who kind of helps. There are a lot of spirits who help me. And I do have a sort of contract with the fox spirits I work with, specifically one, and that would be the spirit that I consider to be like more of a familiar rather than the entirety of the spirit of the fox. But I do work with like both elements of it, which is a question I get a lot, which is like, do you work with one spirit that's specifically a fox, or do you work with like, I work like the idea of the fox as a spirit? Both. I've had foxes be a huge part of my life for a really long time, and I think that developing a relationship with one specific fox spirit to me is important, but I also feel like I have a relationship and have learned a lot just from learning about what the fox as an animal does, what they represent in folklore, how to work with them. Oh, this tea is good. Without further ado, let's dive in. I just first started seeing foxes when I was first getting into kind of witchcraft. And I put it in quotation marks because I wasn't really doing any spells. I was just curious. Like, I wanted to explore my relationship with the natural world a little more. I wanted to kind of lean into what I felt were relationships with animals and plants. And that was kind of when I started noticing foxes. I'd never seen a fox before in my life. I knew they were around in my old area, which was Pennsylvania. I knew they lived there, but I'd never actually seen one. In the first few times that I saw them, I noticed immediately because I'm like, oh my God, I've never seen a fox before, that's crazy. And very quickly there seemed to be a pattern with their appearances. And I established this pattern through like several experiences all kind of within the same year, and that was if I saw 3 or more foxes, or no, just 3, like specifically 3 foxes that week, like within the span of a week, I was gonna get bad or unexpected news. Then I also noticed that sometimes I would just see 1 fox, and that I always kind of took as like a confirmation of like, you're headed on the right track, you're gonna be fine, and they tended to appear when I needed them the most. So the first time that I saw 3 foxes, I found out very quickly that someone was sleeping with someone I was seeing, and I wasn't aware of it. And the second time was another piece of bad news that was like absolutely devastating to myself in high school, that now I'm just like, yeah. I stopped seeing foxes really as I didn't even take a break, but I found myself being probably a little less spiritual when I was at college, just for terms of accessibility, just for the fact that I felt like a lot of people were not interested in it around me. A lot of people really didn't like me doing it around me, and that of course influenced me. Then, you know, made my return when I started kind of fully practicing again. Like before, I had been practicing, but not really as in-depthly as I would have liked. And then I kind of launched myself back into it. And from there, it took a while to see some foxes. I remember seeing them a few times before I moved to Colorado, and then when I moved to Colorado, I didn't see them at all. So I was like, damn, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what. So I didn't see any foxes for the first year of living in Colorado. And then like none at all, like not even a sign that they were there. Like didn't see footprints, didn't see bones, and like absolutely nothing. And of course I'm sitting here like, I've been abandoned. I wasn't abandoned. And during this time, you know, I was still working with a fox spirit. So that was kind of my tethering to them. And then the next time I saw a fox in person, because so here's the thing about foxes, is you don't really see them a lot. They kind of like are there, but they're not going to be out in the open, especially not during the day, especially not outside of their hours of operation. If it's not, they're also, foxes are territorial. If there's another fox in the area, they're not going to come there. Foxes are just hard to find. You don't see them a lot, at least in my experience. I'm sure that if you go out into the woods at a specific time of day, or you go into their habitat at a specific time of day, you'd be more likely to see them. But personally, when I'm asking for a sign from the universe, from my guides, I don't like to put myself in those positions. I don't like to seek out the signs. I just let it happen. Then saw a fox. I did. I saw towards the end of the year, my partner and I had, oh, you know what? I did see a fox when I moved to Colorado. I forgot about that one. Started seeing my partner and I saw a fox when we first started dating in his neighborhood in person, and I saw it and just immediately knew. I'm like, yeah, you're the one. This is it. We're it. You know, that was the first one. And I remember seeing that, and all of my doubts, all of my everything gone. I was like, you're my person, and that's gonna become clear. If it's not right now, it will be. Second time I saw it in Colorado was after my partner and I were talking. He was in my family's house with me, and we were working together to move in, and we were, you know, trying to find a place to live. And I think we had finally put in like a lease, or we had put in an application somewhere. Once again, lots of doubt, not sure if it was the right decision. I was very worried, very nervous. There was a big fox in my parents' backyard, like during this period of doubt. And I said, oh, right decision. By the way, this fox was like huge, like size of a dog, big. And so when I said I saw a fox and I explained how big it was, my mom and dad were like, there's no way that was a fox. It was probably a coyote. And so I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure it was a fox. Like I know them. I know what it looks like. Next day, that fox came for 3 nights to my parents' house. I only saw it once though. And that was the thing, is it showed up 3 times. I only saw it once. So, and my parents saw it and they were like, oh my God, it is huge. And I'm like, you're f***ing Paul Dio. And then we moved, and then for a while I didn't see any. Until, not last winter, but this winter, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, like must have had a freaking den nearby. So there's some things that like, and here's the thing, is there's a difference to me between I'm seeking a sign, I'm in a really bad spot, I feel like I need like a little bit of guidance or need reassurance, and a fox shows up, and just seeing a fox when I'm just like doodling on my way. But the first time I saw them in this house, my dog woke me up barking at 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. The sun was just starting to come up, like evening outside. I'm like, what the f is he on? What is going on? And instead of walking over to the door and looking out the living room window, I just went over to my bedroom window and went beep. And in the yard, there's a fox. And then on the other side, on the side of our neighbor's fence, another one comes, and they just run into our backyard. And I go, they have arrived. I knew they had been there because I was finding animal remains all over my backyard. Or eggs. Yes, eggs. Chicken eggs. And I'm like, so they're stealing chicken eggs and bringing them to my yard and eating them there. I found like 3 eggs, all at different points, all eaten. And I'm like, who has chickens around here? Is that even allowed? I don't know. And I was also finding little gifts of like full rabbit feet. Full rabbit feet. I found 3 full rabbit feet. And I'm like, thank you. So I knew they had been there because I was seeing the like scat, I was seeing their paw prints, and I was seeing these remains of clearly what they were eating. For a while I thought it was coyotes, but there wasn't enough of it to be a coyote. There was only like really 1 footprint. There was only really enough that it seemed like there was 1 animal in the backyard. I'm like, okay, cool, foxes. And then recently, the past like, God, like how many couple months, I see them all the time. Everywhere, all the time. And one of those times, it definitely was like a confirmation of like, you're fine, you're gonna be okay, you're heading on the right track. The other time, I saw 3, and I go, fuck, I'm gonna get bad news. What is going on? I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's changed, maybe it's there. And then I saw a 4th one, and I go, okay, I don't know what that means. And I saw a 5th one, and I'm like, what the f is going on? So I was seeing them all throughout the week, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on, I don't know what's happening, I need to do a reading. I pull out my Lenormand cards. The first card I get, fox. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I'm getting, at this point, I'm like, either the fox, like spirit of the fox, or one of the fox spirits I'm working with has something to tell me, or I don't know, like I had no idea what was happening. So I'm like, I don't know. And so I pull fox, and I pull like books, and I'm like, what? Then I pull another one. That was like a card that meant movement. A week ago, I had taken one of the fox skulls and taken the books out from under it and put them on the bookshelf in my living room and left the fox skull where it was. And I said, what is going on? Does this spirit want to be moved? So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna move you to the bookshelf. Moved her to the bookshelf, and didn't see any foxes then for like 4 to 6 weeks until the most recent one. And I was like, okay, that was it. Cool. But it was, that experience in particular was wild because I kept seeing them. It wasn't just once, it wasn't just twice, it was like upwards of 5 times every day, sometimes multiple times a day. And then I went back to seeing none. I wasn't doing anything different. I was running my life very normally, going to work, going home, going to dance. I really didn't change my routine at all. And I was seeing more of them. And I was like, something's happening here. Turns out one of my fox spirits wanted to be on my bookshelf. They got used to or liked the books I had near them or underneath them. And they said, put me over there, bitch, right now. And that's all. So this is what I mean when I say like working with a trickster is never going to be what you expect, especially like a well-known one. Because I thought I was in danger at that point. I'm like, I'm seeing way too many. Something's going to happen. Am I going to I immediately went to worst case scenario. That spirit just didn't like its location in my house anymore, which that spirit, the younger fox spirit I have, nicknamed Scorch, and the names that I give the spirits, I kind of just give them nicknames. They both have very significantly different energies. I don't really know their quote unquote real names. I don't know if foxes and fox spirits have capabilities of having real names, but it's just a nickname. It's how I can differentiate between them and differentiate who I'm communing with or communicating with based beyond just like holding the skull and working with the skull. So this skull in the past has dropped something on my head because I brought her home into, and this is when I say when I'm like integrating a new spirit into a house, there's going to be trial and error, because if you're actually bringing like bones or remains or something that has a spirit tied to it into a space, it may just tell you that it doesn't like you and it doesn't like where you put it. So I put her next to the other fox spirit. I'm like, oh, you guys can be friends. No. Scorch wanted her own space, and immediately upon their like books falling off of things, pictures falling off the wall only in my room, by the way, just in my room, nowhere else. Books falling off the wall. I had like something hanging on my wall fall on me at like 3 a.m. So I was like, what is going on? And then I was like, okay, the only thing I've done recently is bring this spirit in. I'm gonna move her and see if that helps. I moved her to a different spot, everything stopped. It went from like multiple times a day, things falling over, things breaking, to nothing. And I said, okie dokie, you two are staying separate from now on. And I've kept them separate ever since. The first spirit that I work with, I think, older, a lot more calm in a lot of ways. Little more willing, I think, to work with me on spells, on protection for the home, on that kind of stuff. Scorch? No. She's just here to hang out. I have never attempted to do a spell with her because I just hadn't felt right. She doesn't, her energy doesn't feel very open to it. Like, she's just very content hanging out and being in my space and like receiving offerings and not any working with me. Like, I have not tried or attempted to do a spell with her. So there are these two distinct fox spirits that I work with, or that I have around, because Scorch I don't really work with. And that's what I mean when I say when you bring a spirit in the house, you don't even know if it's going to want to be around you or like work with you in that way. The other one I specifically got as an effigy because I had felt how the presence of the fox was affecting my magical practice, the fox as a whole. And so the other spirit's skull is more used as an effigy, or kind of a link to the spirit of the fox as a collective, and also the individual spirit of the fox. So it's a little less nutty. It's not as defined in in his personality traits. It's not as kind of finicky. I also believe that the Scorch's skull is one of a juvenile or a smaller fox, which explains why she's just like bouncing all over the place all the time. But the other one, it's both a kind of connection to the fox who passed away, whose skull I now hold, but also to like fox as a whole, the spirit of the fox. Kind of that energy, that trickster spirit, that kind of the teachings of that animal. Foxes and fox spirits are very good for invisibility workings or tricking other people, which I have done some of in the past. They're also, in my opinion, very good for reversals or kind of mirror wards where you're reflecting something back at someone. And I mean, moving in silence is Fox's lesson. Fox tells us to not announce everything. You don't have to be very open with everything. You don't need to prove yourself to anyone. Fox doesn't need to prove itself. Himself. The spirit of the fox is clever. It knows how to survive, and it knows how to get what it wants in a way that isn't just like taking. So there's kind of couple aspects to fox here. Aspect of an animal that you never see, so that invisibility aspect, the aspect of an animal who everyone thinks something about in one way or another. And it's going to be different depending on who you are and what that fox portrays to you, or what that fox kind of shows you. If the fox is stealing chicken eggs from your coop, you're going to think they're a villain. If the fox is leaving you presents in your backyard, you're going to be very happy. If you're like me, your association with fox is going to be protection and trust. And I think that in a way. There are a lot of animals like that, and it's why animal spirits, like plant spirits, like all genius loci, local land spirits, have so many facets to them, because everyone has a different relationship with them and everyone sees them in a different way. Someone could take fox teeth and have an association with them that is utterly like fox taking their well-being and their livelihood, and they could use it to curse someone. Or, like me, if you have an association with foxes of them being invisible, of moving in silence, being protective, it's very easy to work with them for that kind of magic. Foxes in general are, and what I've learned is that things are never going to go the way you plan. You can ask Fox for something, ask Fox to help you with something, and it may go in the 180 direction of what you were expecting. So when you ask a fox spirit for something, you're not just getting what you asked for. And that's just a trickster element to it. It's like, oh, you asked for this? Well, you have a lesson to learn on the way there, and I'm not giving it to you until you do A, B, and C, or you're just not getting it. Or you're getting something completely different, or you are getting it, but it's not really what you asked for. I think that's why working with foxes just taught me so much flexibility, especially in terms of my practice, because when I attempt to do spells, when I work, sometimes they just work very weirdly or differently. Animal spirits, I think, more than many other spirits, are not, and especially like animal spirits and similarly to like human spirits, not spirits you control at all. And there, I think, are animals that are a little bit more benevolent. I don't even mean benevolent, but like easier to work with, easier to do things with. Like if you were going to befriend the spirit of a dog, you know you have an animal that's very, very loyal, that's going to do a lot of things, especially if you befriend the spirit of a particular breed or past spirit. Then you have like trickster spirits or spirits of like larger animals who have it's like they're not domestic, they're wild animals. When you are working with a wild animal spirit, you need to expect nothing for the first bit. Because I feel like a lot of the time, and I don't mean like expect nothing like they're not going to give you anything, I mean maybe, but like wild animal spirits are wild animal spirits. They are not domestic. They probably didn't like humans, didn't spend any time around humans, maybe even had a negative relationship with humans. So when you're approaching that spirit work, you need to keep that in mind, that maybe right off the bat, that's not going to go well, and it's going to take time to build a relationship. I think the spirit of the fox I've been working with for a long time and been around for a long time, but Scorch, we're not there yet. Maybe one day I'll be able to ask her for spell work, but right now that's not happening because I don't feel as though she wants to help me in that way. And that's just working with spirits in general. Sometimes spirits are like yes, and sometimes they're like no, and sometimes they want nothing to do with you. And part of building a relationship with a spirit, especially an animal spirit, a human spirit, a plant spirit, any type of spirit, is recognizing the aspects of them that will continue past if they were alive at some point. Or the ways that reflects in the spirit work. So learning about what the animal does. Are they a predator? Are they a prey animal? Are they a pack animal? Are they a herd animal? Are they going to be wanting company? Is getting one of them going to lead to getting 3 more because it's going to get lonely, not going to want to work with you unless there's other spirits like it around? It's a really complex situation in which you're not only studying your relationship with the spirit and how the spirit behaves, but you're also doing an animal study. You're learning about where this animal lives, what it likes to eat, how it behaves in the wild, how it behaves towards other animals, including other animals of the same, other animals who are the same and other animals who are different. And I've said this before, if you know that you have a spirit that fucking hates bears, like for some reason, you know, or like the animal spirit that you're working with would not like having a bear around in real life, don't bring a bear spirit into your house. That doesn't make any sense. It's very, and I think the way I approach it is very logical and it's very practical and it's very much focused on the kind of alive aspects of the spirit. And here's the thing. Everything I just said, you can take with a grain of salt. You know why? This is story tea time. This is not educational Frankie time. I am sharing my experience with you because I feel like there may be people who may benefit from it, but at the same time, there may be people who watch this video and they're like, I don't do anything like that and it works for me. I fucking love that for you, okay? As long as you're respectful, as long as you are doing your research before trying to work with an animal, in general, I tend to stay away from animals who are only kind of seen as sacred or worked with or have folklore in indigenous cultures. I'm not gonna go over there. That's not my business, and that is not for me. If you're sitting here like, this is the stupidest video I've ever seen, I don't wanna take any of this advice, okay, that's fine. That is completely your opinion. This is my opinion and my experience, and we are probably gonna have different experiences and different opinions, and that's okay. And the reason I say this is because last time I did the story tea time and I said don't hex in the house, I don't feel like people recognized that that was my opinion and that that is not the rule. For me, it's a rule of thumb and it's the advice I'm going to give you, but it doesn't mean you have to take it. You can literally, you don't have to take my advice. I'm just a person with a camera. And you are someone who may have completely different experiences than me. So I wanted to get that out of the way because I definitely understand how maybe it came across like I was telling you absolutely can't do that. But for me, that was a story time. I'm not sitting there and telling you don't have to do it. That's the advice I follow. That's the advice I learned from teachers. And that's the advice me and my friends all agree upon. And you may have a completely different approach, and that's okay, because there are how many fucking types of traditions in the world? How many different teachers? How many different ways of approaching the world? Sip my tea. I feel like sharing my experience with the fox spirit would, I'm hoping, give some people some understanding of how sometimes spirit relationships can look. Also kind of talked about a little bit about like quote unquote signs. Because there are 100% times where I've seen a fox and I'm like, that didn't mean anything. It's really specific to what you're experiencing in that moment. In the same way that there are times where I see crows outside my house. I go, nice, a crow. I'm not asking the universe for anything at that point. I'm not in a deep pit of despair needing a way out, you know? And then there are times where I am in the middle of a health scare and I don't know what's going on and I'm terrified and it's noon, middle of the day, and a fox comes into my yard and I see it. And I know in that moment, because I'm having this time, I'm having this period, I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling abandoned, I'm feeling scared, I know that fox was there for me to tell me things were okay because it came into my yard. And at a time of day where, I don't know if you've ever seen a fox at noon, it is weird, it feels wrong. And so that's how I knew that I was gonna be fine. And I wasn't like dying, was that. And that was a sign versus, you know, seeing 5+ foxes throughout the course of a week. And I'm like, what is going on? What are you trying to tell me? And that spirit was just like, you took away my books. What the fuck? That wasn't really a sign. It was just more of a message. It was like, hey, attention, hey. Which I'm very happy that Scorch has moved from knocking things over and breaking things and dropping things on my head at 3 a.m. to here's a bunch of foxes, pay attention. God bless. But spirit work is so versatile and so different depending on the culture you're coming from and the tradition you're coming from. And my advice is not going to be the same as everyone else's. So if it doesn't jive with you, you're like, if you don't vibe with it, that's fine. That's okay. You know, that's fine. But I hope that my experience and sharing kind of how I approached working with fox spirits, some stories about working with them, and the teachings of the fox maybe will help someone. I feel like a lot of times they're very difficult to find remains of. You don't need animal remains to work with an animal spirit, by the way. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but I was working with the fox and had the fox in my life for a long time before I had any sort of remains. It worked fine. I mean, you can literally print out a picture of a fox. Part of my devotion to the fox spirit is just learning as much as I can about foxes, especially those that are rescued. I don't know if anyone follows Juniper the fox. I love Juniper the fox, okay? I love Juniper the fox. And learning about like foxes rescued from fur farms, or foxes, you know, living in captivity, but how they're still also wild animals at the same time. They're not domestic, they never would. Like, all these things, they are devotion. And also, I just go outside. I know that sounds weird, but like literally one time I got a reading. I'm like, how am I supposed to honor this spirit? And they're like, have you gone outside recently? Have you touched grass? And I'm like, okay. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a little story tea time. It was something that I've been wanting to do for a while, but instead of doing like all the things that my spirits have taught me, I'm just kind of I kept to fox because that's a relationship that I'm comfortable sharing. That's a relationship that I've had a lot of time to develop. It's not a newer one. It's not one that I feel like is private. It's one I've been very open with because I love working with the spirit of the fox, and I love working with the fox spirits, and the kind of place they have in my life and my practice is very special to me in a lot of ways. And they're honestly, at this point, the animal spirit that I work the most with and the one that I go to the most. And that to me is just, I don't know, I think it's kind of beautiful. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. If you want, you can like, comment, subscribe, and turn the bell on, but absolutely no pressure. Remember, drink water or tea to keep yourself hydrated, and have an amazing rest of your day. Siate benedetti.